Hello, everybody, and welcome to the latest episode of SEPA Paranormal Chronicles. And today I am delighted to have Neil Armstrong on the show. And before you say anything, not that one, it's a different one. And he is the publisher of a brand new paranormal magazine in the UK called Enigmazine. I hope I've said that correctly. Neil, welcome.
Hi, Lee. How are you?
Not too bad. Luckily,
Splendid.
in Canada, it's beginning to warm up now, so all the snow's going. And
lovely.
Still
It's
about
still
minus.
cold here. Freezing.
Yeah, we get minus 25 to minus 30, so shush. Let's not go there. So, do I call you Neil or do I call you Bigfoot? Because I've been looking at the magazine.
You've noticed that. No, you call me Neil. It's funny. I mean, obviously everyone recognises the name, and then they're slightly disappointed when they find out it's not the astronaut. But it's helped me all my life, really. The name. It's not been a hindrance. People remember it.
And they remember it for the right reasons.
Yeah.
So, before we go into the reason why you're here, I know at the beginning. I know it seems to be a bit of a lag. I know at the beginning of the magazine, your first edition came out a month ago. You had a bit of an introduction to yourself. And I know you say that you had some experiences as a youth. Do you want to talk about those now, or do you want to wait until the second edition comes out? Because I believe you're going to be doing that in the up and coming editions. Is that correct?
Yeah. Well, in the first, so I've had quite a few little incidental kind of unexplainable paranormal things happen to me in my life, but I've written about the main two in the first two editions. So in the first edition, I write about my being visited by my dead grandmother, who told me that I was ill and needed to seek medical attention. And as it turned out, I did, and I was ill. I had sepsis, but I didn't know it, there's no pain with that. So that encounter is interesting, as is kind of pivotal, and also just a few years ago. It happened when I was an adult. But the other main one was a poltergeist experience, and that's written about in issue 2, which is just coming out this week in the UK. And that happened when I was a kid. I was only 5, in visiting my sister's house in Yorkshire, and it was the first night that I was there as well. That story is in the second edition. But to cut a long story short, it was the first time that I'd been to the house. They had encountered. That's my sister and my brother-in-law at the time had encountered some weird things happening in the house. And afterwards, after this experience that I had as well, some years after, I spoke to my sister about it, and she told me a whole load of other stuff that had happened in that same house. And it's in a little village called Clifton in South Yorkshire. And my experience there was a poltergeist, and their experience was things just randomly moving around the house, ending up in locations where they shouldn't be, and things like objects that weren't theirs appearing.
And that's really interesting, because I interviewed a guy that's had a poltergeist experience from Seattle, and he experienced 3 years of the poltergeist, and some of the stuff that you've just mentioned, he's coming out, books disappearing, Bibles disappearing, car keys, and all that kind of stuff. But your writing career started way back in the 90s with another magazine, Encounters. It's Legendary Encounters magazine. Is that correct?
Yeah, it didn't quite start there, but my writing career was with the same company, but I started in other magazines that weren't paranormal. And a mate of mine, who is a guy called Richard Forsyth, who also has written for us, he's got a brilliant story about a haunting in Wiltshire that he was involved in the first issue. But it was his idea, Encounters magazine, but he hadn't edited a magazine before, and I had, so I was helping him for the first issue. I was part of the launch team of Encounters, and that was quite a success, that magazine, because at the time it was it kind of hit a wave of interest with the alien autopsy pictures and stories of UFOs in and around New York State, and some other stuff. To cut a long story short, there we had something like 160,000 sales, which is a really impressive amount in the UK, and certainly you won't get anything like that now. But it then became an Alien Encounters, and latterly there's a guy called Uri Geller who got involved in it, I think. But the magazine was somewhat groundbreaking. I mean, there wasn't really a paranormal magazine at the time. I think at the same sort of time, 40 and Times was starting, and some time after that, Haunted magazine in the UK. And I think there may have been the odd one or two come and go. But it was good to be involved in that sort of success, and kind of opened our eyes to the possibilities of providing a community with a magazine. It's kind of I always find if a subject matter has got a magazine or two or three, then it legitimizes the subject matter a tad, and for people who are interested in that sort of thing, I think it's good to be able to find a magazine that you can get on a monthly basis, which covers the things that you're interested in. Because it seems to me there's lots of other magazines about all sorts of other areas of interest. I mean, there's 1,000 magazines on fishing and golf, but not that many on what is pretty much a huge aspect of life, and the unknown, and those sorts of subjects that we all wonder about. And many of us have had experiences in, but it's very seldom kind of gets into the kind of wider niche. It remains as in the niche. It rarely comes into the mainstream, and I think it does belong in the mainstream. So I was pointing out the other day, over the years, Hollywood has spent billions and billions and billions of dollars making films about hauntings, aliens, UFO. So why would they do that? It's because people are interested in it.
Exactly. And it's really weird that the two paranormal magazines I subscribe to, one being yours and the other one being the Haunted magazine, because there does not seem to be any decent ones this side of the pond, which I find really strange, especially with all the conspiracy theories that certain people over the border have. And you sort of like, but I always tell people that the UK is where all the history comes from. So all the paranormal stuff seems to come from the UK. It is getting more popular now, but it seems to be UK based for most of it.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's some really good hot spots of paranormal activity.
I definitely think there's America. A bit of a lag with.
Yes. Oh yeah. Yes. Is that? Are we back? Can you hear me again? I can see we've got a lag.
Yeah, we're good. I can. Yeah, we're good. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I think you've got a good point. There are lots of, virtually there are ghosts and stories.
Yeah, I can still hear you.
Around every corner in the UK. Not so much in America, but it has got its hotspots. It's got its paranormal hotspots, like some of the battlefields. There's a lot of stuff in and around the reservations. There's lots of stuff in the Bigfoot area, and also in the neck of the woods that you're in. I mean, there's Bigfoot all over that neck of the woods, isn't there? So there is, and obviously UFOs and all of that. I mean, that's the US is pretty much the epicenter for all of that. But in terms of ghosts and historic things tied to ghostly events and things like time slips and stuff. There are hotspots, but they're few and far between. But as you say, becoming much more common. And with you, I'm the same in terms of I'm thinking, America and Canada has got huge amounts of people in it. Lots of them are interested in this subject matter. It would be great to get a magazine, our magazine, over there.
And that's one of the reasons why I kind of jumped at the chance to get you onto the podcast, because in this day and age, we've got the e-magazines that we can subscribe to, and the fact that you guys are in the UK and you've got all your material from both sides of the pond, it's good that people from my neck of the woods can now subscribe and get an e-version of the magazine, so that they're not missing out per se. They're still getting the content on a monthly basis.
Yeah, so we've developed like 4, because we were only really going to have it as a printed magazine in the UK, and you can get it as a printed magazine sent to you. We've just had someone from Sweden order today, for instance. But so we do send it worldwide, but it's not that cost effective. So we do have a digital page turner subscription that you can subscribe to the monthly magazine. You can do that through Pocket Mags. We also have a PDF inbox version, which is very reasonable. That at the end of each month that the magazine comes out, a PDF version pops into your inbox. So we've kind of got a number of different subscription levels and types. But yeah, I mean, certainly for now, we're absolutely committed to a printed version appearing on the high street in the UK. It's in WH Smith and some of the larger supermarkets and independents. Because, having a printed magazine lends its tangibility to the subject matter. And I think it's important to have that in some way. It's not... And it's a magazine that's done for the readership as well, and tries to involve the readership and wants that community to be involved. Believe it or not, it's certainly not a magazine built for profit, and it's certainly not a magazine that's going to get loads and loads of advertisers wanting to get into it. Maybe, certainly that's at the moment, but once it becomes better known and people kind of wake up to the possibilities of the interest that this sort of readership has, then maybe some of those more commercial things will come along. But certainly for now, it's the magazine is hugely editorially heavy, and will continue to be so for the foreseeable future, I would have thought. I think the other good thing is that because we're trying to cover a lot of different
that's
subjects.
Really cool.
So because we're trying to cover a lot of different subjects, there's no end to the amount of stuff we can cover.
Yeah, because having a paranormal podcast, I want to do the same kind of thing. I don't just want to cover the normal topics of ghosts and spirits. I want to cover everything that encompasses the paranormal. So I'm talking about demonology, I'm talking about fairies, herbs within the paranormal world, and absolutely everything. And I think that's more important, to cover everything, because if you Google the word paranormal, you've got so many different subcategories, and there's like 30 or 40 of them that you can speak about, and you can get people to talk about each one, and it'll be a completely different article, lecture, podcast, or whatever. And I think that's what's really good about what you're doing and what we're doing as this podcast as well. So like this podcast, we have to plan in advance of what episodes we're doing. So what kind of articles can we expect in the future from Enigmazine?
Well, in issue 2, which is, as I say, just coming out, we've got we're covering a potential. Well, we're looking at the potential of an alien invasion. When that could be. Are there any clues to when that's likely to be? That's quite an interesting subject. We're looking at ghost hunting in a kind of, from the point of view of some of the gear that you would need to put together to do an investigation. But we're also then looking at Cannock Chase, which is a hot spot in Staffordshire, where they've got a dog man and they've got some UFO sightings and black-eyed kids. We're looking at cryptids in the UK and mapping them. We've got time travel theories. So, and that poltergeist story as well that I was just saying about before, that's in there. But we're also covering things like Gothic horror. You may have noticed in the first issue that what we're also trying to do is while we're bringing lots of niches together, we're also trying to push all of this into the mainstream. So we do have book reviews, we do have movie reviews, we look at what's available on streaming for the subject matter and for for the readership to get involved in what's aimed at them. And I know we're just putting issue 3 together at the moment. We've got another week or two left on that deadline. But that one, we're really embracing some of the stuff that, again, we're intimating at here, which is broader. So we're looking at real vampires in the UK. So those are people that identify as vampires, and there's as many as 10,000 of them, and donors. That's blood donors to vampires in the UK. So we're having a look at that, and also about some of the augmentations and some of the ways that they are that subculture is dressing, and some of the things they're doing in terms of plastic surgery and all those sorts of things, as well as having ghost stories, new ghost stories, some stuff about alien, ancient aliens, and some stuff about mind power and some of those wider unknown issues. And further than that, in the future, I want to get involved in more of the mystical stuff as well. So we've got some interviews coming up with mediums, and also we want to go even further than that in the unexplained realm and maybe look at unsolved crime and things like that. The key bit is the enigma. So Enigmazine is a magazine about mystery, and that's why we called it Enigmazine. It's why we're trying to keep it wide in its subject matter so that it can cover lots of these subjects, but it's not going to cover them as in-depth as an expert would, because the magazine is designed as a gateway into this sort of stuff. So, if you're interested in the paranormal, my thought process would be, for instance, if you're interested in ghosts, you might be open-minded enough to be interested enough to read about time travel theory, or you might be intrigued by time slips. So why wouldn't you also like to think about potential alien invasion? To me, they are all subjects which are the product of a kind of inquisitive and curious mind. And we have that in our ethos, which is, the magazine is for curious, open-minded, free thinkers. And, that means that anything that is unexplained, interesting, can go in there and be of interest to the readership, so that we're not just talking about ghosts, we're not just talking about aliens, or we're not just talking about one specific subject. We're covering a lot, so that, because to me that's what a magazine is. It's an entertainment point, an entry point, and then when you read about it and you think, wow, that's really interesting, that's interesting about time slips, I'll go and read about that. I'll buy a time slip book, or go off into the world of the internet and find out more information.
Yeah, and that connects with me in a big way, because after reading issue 1, I didn't know that time slips existed. So I've been looking more online about time slips. So that's a perfect example of opening up your magazine and finding something that I didn't know about in the past.
Oh well, that's good. That's handy. It's also handy that I wrote a time slip book.
So moving on from there, then, if I had an experience with, yeah, so if I had an experience or I wanted to write an article for you, how would I go about it?
Okay, so we're really interested to hear from readers and anybody that has a story to tell. So we have a dedicated email address, which is readers@enigmazine.com. That goes through to the editorial team. What we want to offer the community a forum there of tell us your story. It could be a ghost story. It could be something else unexplained or weird that you've come across in your own life. Get it off your chest. You're not going to be judged by our readership. I think we're all open minded and curious, and we're interested in finding out these experiences and what's happening. As you were just saying there, for instance, on time slips kind of got me back into the paranormal interest. So after Encounters, I went off into all sorts of other areas of publishing and of business, and I had a couple of creative agencies as well. But a few years ago, I was at a dinner party, and a mate of mine, who's actually called Barry Field, he's named his stories in my book, one of the stories in Time Slip Phenomenon book. But he told me a story that had happened to him, and he termed it to me at the time as a time slip, and I'd never heard of what a time slip was. And his story really intrigued me. It's in the book, but I'll tell you a little bit about the story, which is he was working in rural Wales, and at lunchtime used to go for a walk, and it was this industrial estate that he was working on. It was very surrounded by lovely fields and a forest, and he used to go for a walk for an hour. And this one lunchtime, he's set off to walk the usual route and noticed that it was a lot more overgrown than it had been just the day before. And he noticed a tree stump that he'd never noticed before. And then he encountered a person who was leaning up against the fence that engaged him in a conversation. And to cut a long story short, the guy who engaged him in conversation was telling him how sorry he was about the news that the king had just died. And again, the detail of that is in the book, but it turned out that the guy that he encountered was talking about.
Oh wow!
He was talking about George V, and was saying that he had just found out that morning that the king had died, and he had mentioned that he died of, I think, a bronchial thrombosis or something like that. That's very specific. And then, so Barry thought this was weird anyway, but, didn't freak out, sort of continued the conversation, had the conversation, then went on his way, and then got back to work and thought, that's just so bizarre. He actually went back out, and the path wasn't overgrown. The guy wasn't there. So he put that down as a time slip, and he'd never heard of these things before. He had then investigated. I think he had looked up online. If you sort of put this stuff in, you'll find Bold Street in Liverpool, which is the kind of hot spot in the UK, just because it's had a couple of famous stories reported. But there's a lot more. So it was that story of a time slip that got me intrigued. And then I started, and this was about 3 or 4 years ago, I started researching time slips, enough for a book. But that also then got me involved in thinking and looking at supernatural, paranormal, and the whole world that we've been talking about. And that's when I decided that Enigmazine could be a possibility.
Desma, I'm just in awe with regard to that story that you just mentioned, because it's like, yeah, you're just having a normal walk on a day that you do, you know, many times in the week, and you come across a person that's talking about a different time, and it's sort of like, how can you put that into context? People think you're going to be losing your mind. That's crazy. Okay, so before we go, I've got one more question for you, and I think this is my best question of the day. So I know you've been writing about the paranormal for many years, and I know that you've got more knowledge than what I have, but you've been writing about it longer. So here we go. With regard to the paranormal, in some aspects of it, it is very difficult to prove. So if you could prove one thing in total existence within the paranormal world, which branch would it be and why?
Marvelous question. I think personally it would be. I think it would be the existence of aliens on this planet. The reason for that is I think it would blow everything else open. I don't think it would give us any sort of solution to what ghosts are, but it would certainly redefine certain things in history that we could look at. And I also give that answer thinking and hoping that we will have that evidence within the next few years, and certainly within my lifetime. I think some of the evidence and the actual, on the record stuff now coming from the US government gives some credence to a lot of theories that there has been. And I think we're so close to just accepting the fact and then, moving on from that. But I think what it will do is it will open up a lot of these other fields of the paranormal, and we'll maybe take all of them more seriously. And I think it can only be a good thing.
Yeah, because I asked a Bigfoot investigator a similar question: that would he reveal to the world if he came face to face with a Bigfoot? And funnily enough, he actually said that he would not, because he would want to protect the species. So he would not announce it to the world. And I was actually quite surprised about that. Compared, sort of like, yes, people would want to know about it, but he wants to protect the species. But then I completely understood why he would do what he wanted to do. And it's like, I can't fault him for that. That was like asking him a similar question and getting that answer was like amazing.
Yeah, I think that's when it comes to Bigfoot as well. I think that's a brilliant answer, because there's no doubt in my mind, in my investigations and my reading and research, that Bigfoot is a definite, absolute, nailed it on, definitely, 100%. The evidence, I think, is irrefutable. There is a species of Bigfoot, and yeah, I would like some more evidence, but yeah, I wouldn't like them to be, I wouldn't like the existence of a Bigfoot zoo anytime soon.
Yeah, it just brings memories back to Jurassic Park.
Exactly. We haven't got a Bigfoot. It would have to be a big bit of amber to get a Bigfoot in it.
Yeah. So. Oh, for sure. Well, I appreciate your time today. I hope I've done some positive publicity for your magazine. And if people do want to subscribe, like you said, there's pocket mags, and go into the website themselves, they can subscribe to the magazine. But I thank you for your time, and hopefully we'll be in touch pretty soon to talk about other things.
Yes, Lee.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for your time. And any time that that you want to chew the fat about anything paranormal or unknown, just let me know. I'll be delighted to pop on.
Perfect. Thanks very much, Neil. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thanks.